Hello and welcome back to another Instagram Live. We have gone a little bit dark on these for a bit of time. We had Corey on a few weeks ago, just before the holidays, and we're excited to have another ambassador on here. Her name is Yvette. She'll be joining us soon. We'll get the full introduction from her about how she started in boxing, where she is now. And after that, and even during, if you have any questions in the middle, please don't hesitate to comment below and ask away. We'll have a point in the conversation where she'll be able to answer it, or if it seems like it's more immediate within the context, then we'll get her to answer it then. So we'll wait for her to join. Here she is. I'll send her a quick request, and then we'll get her in to answer all the questions that I have. And then if anyone else has any questions, then we can go. Hey Yvette, how's it going? Good, good.
Good. How are
So
you?
I like to sometimes do a small introduction. As a ring announcer yourself, I don't know if I could do a good of a job as you. So I guess best thing to start is, how did you get into boxing and what roles have you played since, I guess, day one? I know I know it's
Okay,
a
how long
loaded
do you have?
question. I guess a small condensed version, Cole's Notes style.
For sure. First of all, Happy New Year. It's so
I
lovely
can hear
to
you
see
great.
you. Can you hear me okay? Okay, excellent. And yeah, thanks for asking. So I started boxing, well, basically 1998 was the first time I walked into a boxing club. I didn't know I was walking into a boxing club. I thought I was just going to a regular gym. I actually was training to become a trainer, a personal trainer. That's something that I clearly knew that I wanted to do for the rest of my life. And lo and behold, there's this very sophisticated boxing club in the basement of this gym where I started working, and the rest is history. So basically, I've been in and around boxing now officially 25 years since walking into those doors for the first time. I competed from the years 2000 to 2003. This was after I had competed in a bodybuilding competition. And as part of my bodybuilding training, I was doing boxing training for conditioning, fat burning, stress release. And then I quickly realized after bodybuilding, I thought, nah, I want to give this boxing thing a whirl. And it went from there. So I retired in 2003. I did get my pro license to fight at the pro level at the time, as you know, but a lot of people might not know, there was not a lot of opportunities for women. Olympics were not an option for me. So my options were go the national route, Canadian nationals that is, or go the pro route. And injury set in, which was a bit of a bittersweet occasion because, and it was not really boxing related injury, just an accumulative repetitive strain kind of injury. And then from there, I started teaching. So I've been teaching ever since. And the evolution came to be in 2018 and became Canada's first professional female ring announcer. And yeah, and everything in between, my goodness, around teaching boxing, it became so much more than just the physical benefits. And that was very immediately, acutely, I was very acutely aware of that immediately, that there was something deeper going on here. I wasn't just helping people with their physical fitness. This was an emotional connection that they were making with themselves, a stress release, a way to manage their emotions, understand themselves within conflict, and on the list goes. From there, so it's all a bit of a blur in the last 5 years or so, especially through the pandemic in the mix. And Once again, it was a bittersweet occurrence because right before the pandemic, I was really thriving as a ring announcer. I was really gaining momentum around even tapping into the States. I had somebody in America looking at me to do some ring announcing there, and then the pandemic hit. And as a result of that, I took that time and that opportunity to start writing out my keynote speech, which is something that I was wanting to do for many years. I always knew there was a message here within boxing beyond just the punches. The boxing was so much more beyond just punching for me and for participants, people that I introduced it to as well. So started to develop my keynote speech. I hired a coach. I dove right into it. I pretty much developed this program called Find Your Fighter Within, which evolved from being a masterclass to a keynote speech, which is now going to be birthed in March of 2023 as
which I want to get to that in a second. There's a lot of other things in the mix that I want to outline. First things first, we had one question that came in is, what was your fight name? So if you want to share that. Okay, please.
I'll do it with my ring announcer voice. And introducing, fighting out of the red corner, representing Toronto, Ontario. Give it up for Yvette Raposo.
Awesome. I love that. That was amazing. Thank you. That was a nice intro for anyone that hasn't seen you in the ring live before. It was a nice little clip of what they would experience. Just to take it back a few years ago, what was the female women's situation in boxing at the time when you started? And, you know, because obviously it's evolved quite a bit since. I'd just be curious to know, were you the only female at the gym? Were you one of 2, 3?
So, good question. I actually was very, very lucky to be surrounded by a couple of really dedicated, super strong and talented female fighters. And my coach, Billy Martin, props, shout out to Billy Martin, who saw the potential in women early on. He really actually, I'm just going to turn my notifications off. My coach, Billy, really saw the opportunity here to give women, us women, a platform. And he dedicated so much of his time and energy, just the same as he did to the guys in the gym. So I, in particular, had 2 stablemates who were female, Teresa and Jasmina. And we were called Billy's Boom Boom Girls because we would go to tournaments and we would crush these tournaments because, first of all, we had each other to work off of, and anybody in boxing knows, and this is actually part of my keynote speech, it's an element of my keynote speech where I speak about the boxer looks alone in the ring. They appear to be alone in the ring. What people don't realize is the team of people, including their sparring partners, who helped them prepare to be in that ring. And so I was very fortunate in that respect. As a whole, in general, there were females around, like Ontario was my region. And in 2001, I became the Ontario champion, and that was an exciting time. And we had Sully's, we had St. Catharines Boxing Club, and there were women. See, women have always been interested and curious and wanted to partake in the sport. It really came down to opportunity. Now, on the pro scene, at the pro level, no, very slim pickings. In fact, like I mentioned, I did turn pro, and I was accelerated through the amateurs to get my pro license because I showed through my application and through my undefeated record as an amateur, I pretty much in my medicals, I showed that I was fit to fight, as they say. And by the time I came pro, I was like, you know what? The injury helped me to make that decision, but I mean, I was going to fight for nothing, basically. I mean, I would have to go out and travel to get these fights. And at that time, I was already 26. So it's like, you know what? I know something better for me at this point that I want to be doing with this wisdom and knowledge that I now have about boxing. And
one thing I will say is that I think for the benefit of others, that change in direction for you has been really helpful. And I say that for everyone else, not maybe for yourself. I think that obviously it might have been nice for you to have that opportunity even for a year just to kind of get that off of your chest. But I think the evolution of what you've done since then. So I guess there's a few things I want to talk about. Is one thing that I know that you've done, because we've worked together on it, is your course that you've done with U of T. So if you want to just share a bit about that, because that's been something that's really exciting for you, considering it started as an idea. It started from, one semester of one course, and I don't even know what the numbers are at now. So if you want to just fill us in on that.
Certainly. Thank you for asking. So U of T, University of Toronto, one of the most prestigious universities in Canada, I am teaching the boxing program there and have been for the last year. So before this came to be, I had developed this Find Your Fighter Within workshop. So there's a bit of a backstory to this. The Find Your Fighter Within workshop, I had imagined it was really important coming out of the pandemic for students. I have 3 nephews who are teenagers, and I was really feeling for that age group. And I came up with this workshop for students heading back into first year university, helping them to prepare for the school year, thinking like a fighter, to feel like a champion. So this was this concept that I had devised. I was pitching it, I had advertised it, I paid advertisement for it. Nothing came of it. So although feeling disappointed, I know how these things go. And sometimes you need to give an idea and a concept space to organically grow on its own and attract what it needs to attract. In the meantime, a buddy of mine says, hey, Yvette, I did this workshop, a virtual workshop because it was COVID for U of T, and I dropped your name saying that they'd be really lucky to have you to teach boxing. That would be a great idea. And I was like, and he might be on the call right now. Kirk, are you in the house? Kirk, Roosevelt Designs. I think I saw you in the house. And I said, yeah, okay, great. Thanks, Kirk. That's fantastic. What are the chances they're going to reach out to me? And they did. So when U of T reached out to me, their idea was around diversity and inclusion, introducing boxing as a way for women's empowerment, as an all for people who identify as women, group training for confidence and empowerment. So I said, sure, I'll call it whatever you want. This is fantastic. I'll step in and I'll do this. And it happens to be aligned because teaching boxing training helps with self-empowerment, confidence, the list goes on. So we started off, we tried it out, and it's funny, I reflect back now, and when I was speaking to my contact there, and I was in the process of designing the program, I'm thinking, okay, I asked her, so what is the plan for this program so that I know how to plan out this? Imagine, Helene, you're going in to teach boxing. Boxing is a very complex, very diverse, very dynamic, it has a lot of elements to it. So I can go in and just teach the 1-2, the jab and the cross and the slip, north and south, and that's it? Or do you want me to go into offense, defense, angles? Like, how deep do you want me to go here? How much time do I have, basically? And she says, well, let's just see how it goes. And in my mind, Helene, I said, oh, you're going to see how it goes. Oh, don't you worry, you're going to see. And I say that with a very warm heart because I give a lot of credit to U of T for giving us this opportunity, because boxing is a hard sell, because institutions, corporations, people in general make assumptions about boxing. They've already decided what it is in their mind. And I say, whoa, hang on. Can I just explain to you? It's about the elements of boxing training. We're not going to be punching each other in the face. You can train in boxing and extract the elements of being a fighter, embodying the movements of being a fighter, and still benefit physically and mentally, emotionally, and spiritually without having to hit each other. So off we go, developed the first program. It was an 8-week program. We did 2 classes, both sold out. Great. Spring program, 2 classes, both sold out right away. Within 1 day, they both sold out, off the charts. Website, went up on the website, sold out. Oh, so they're like, I think we have something here. Come the summer, because it's a slower time for universities, not all students are on campus. We did one class, sold out. So by the time fall hit around, fall 2022, they had approached me and said, can we expand this program? Can we grow it in numbers and add, and now that we were coming a little bit more out of COVID, we had more space to play with, 2 more programs, including co-ed. Now we introduced the co-ed, both sold out. And now starting in January, in a couple of weeks, we are up to 4 sold out programs at UFT 2023. These
That's awesome.
students want to
I
box.
couldn't agree more with like life lessons for boxing. I'm sure you can list 100 things about all the things you've learned from boxing on all different areas too, right? Like you also learn things differently as an amateur fighter, as a coach, from the ring announcing as well too. Like there's so many elements that come into play that I know I've been in a session, I'm like, wow, that's a life lesson right there. Myself. So I hate kind of going back and forth, but something that popped in my head as we were talking is, how did the transition get into ring announcing? Because at one point it was amateur fighting, which is amazing, and then it turned into professional. And then where did you, was it the desire to be in the ring still somehow?
Yeah, it was. So when I retired from boxing and I started teaching boxing for fitness, it was a very conscious move. I didn't want to be in and around the competition zone at that time. It was very hard for me after I retired to be around competition because I missed it, right? I wanted to be in there. And because I was injured and, it just didn't work out for me, I made a conscious effort to continue to stay in the energy of boxing in a different way, in a different environment. So that's through the gyms. I was teaching classes across the city. I eventually started to attend fights again. So probably about 5 years after I retired, I was able to start attending fights and enjoying them as a fan now. And that was wonderful,
experience
actually.
Hard? Okay.
No, because I was ready. And I was very happy because I wasn't dieting anymore. So I was like, this is fantastic. I didn't hardcore diet. I didn't cut weight hardcore. In fact, after my first or second fight, I fought at, I think it was lightweight at the time. I think they've changed the weight classes since then, but I fought at around under 135. And for me, getting under 135 was hard. And so we decided early on, me and my coach, that I wasn't going to cut weight like that. But I was still, eating super healthy and on a certain type of eating. So my first time back at the fights was really glorious because I could really enjoy it as a fan and be very relaxed while watching it, as opposed to, having these thoughts of wishing that I was in there. And when you attend the fights, you're like, oh, this is what I would do. And that's what I would do. But of course, we see the fight differently when we're sitting in the crowd, right? Yeah. So the transition to ring announcers. So then over the years, I always stuck around the energy of boxing. And then I started to going to more and more fights. And, people in boxing stick around. Like, I know people in the community who I've known for the whole 25 years, including my coach, who I've reconnected with now. He's teaching at Hard Knocks Boxing Club downtown. And so what happened was, actually, it's a funny story, as they always are, as it always is in boxing. So one of the first people ever who encouraged me to fight, to compete, who basically gave me permission to say, you can do this, was Everton McEwen. And if you've been around boxing for any period of time in Ontario, you know the name Everton McEwen. And when I was first training at Huff, at Heron Ultimate Fitness, at the time is what it was called, back in the day in 1998 to 2000, I was sitting around just eating my lunch ringside, and Everton walked in, and he would come in with the pros a lot of the time. And I was already being exposed to professional boxing right out of the gates, right out of the corner. And one day I was sitting by the ring, and Everton says, and he saw that I was just, I kept showing up and I kept watching and I was engaged and intrigued. And he said, you can do that too. And I looked at him and I was like, yeah. And he's like, yeah. And I did. I was like, okay, I'm doing it. Fast forward to over 10 years later, him and I reconnect. So I've now competed, I retired, I've been teaching for fitness for years, going to fights here and there, haven't seen Everton McEwen in many years. I run into him at a gala event where Lennox Lewis and Evander Holyfield were guest speakers at this gala event, random in Hamilton, Ontario. My clients got me tickets. It was a corporate event. I walk in, who's there? Everton McEwen. We start talking. Hey, what have you been up to? Da, da, da. We basically end up having dinner together, and we're catching up, and he realizes, holy, this girl, she's been studying. She's been still engaged in the sport. So basically he said, listen, I want you to be my ring announcer. I have a fight show coming up, and I want you to be my ring announcer. And this is at the amateur level. But Everton did his amateur shows with a pro flair. He was always about like bringing in that pro energy. He would have entertainment in between bouts, like during intermission. And I said, you serious? And he said, yeah, I'm serious. I said, okay, well, call me tomorrow if you're serious. And he did. And for the next 3 years, we did 9 shows together at the Oasis Convention Center in Mississauga. And then as I was evolving as a ring announcer, I was taking voice lessons, improv lessons, because to your point, yes, I wanted to find my way back inside the ring. And I felt comfortable inside of the ring, but I didn't have any speaking training, any public speaking training, any stage presence training. So I was like, I can go in there and, you know, basically beat people up or, you know, exchange. I can throw hands, but to be a public speaker was a whole different ball game. And in fact, I was more nervous to be a ring announcer than I was to be a fighter. So as people, yeah, it is interesting. And as people in the sport started to notice my involvement and, you know, my dedication to ring announcing, people were just like, Yvette, you should go pro. Like, you need to go pro. You need to go pro. You have what it takes. And so it happened. So I was recommended, I was referred. You know, social media is a powerful thing. I tell fighters all the time, or any entrepreneur, because I believe if you're a fighter, you're also an entrepreneur, because you're basically your own brand and you're pitching and you're selling yourself. And life doesn't end after boxing competition. Okay, and I am living proof of that. You can make a career out of this in many dynamic ways. And so, yeah, I just caught traction with the work that I was doing. And I had my first pro gig in 2018.
And do you have any upcoming, now that like shows are back, and are you planning on having any upcoming events that you're going to be ring announcing at?
So I would love to get back in there. I am open, I'm ready, I'm available. Because I've been so focused on my keynote speaking and now the retreat, I feel like a lot of my energy, and, you know, I was speaking to one of our local promoters on the phone a couple of weeks ago, and he's like, Yvette, I didn't know you were still ring announcing. Like, why didn't you tell me? And I said, well, why didn't you come and get me? You know where I'm at, right? And so it's like one of these kind of cat and mouse things. And to his point, and he's right, I haven't been putting it out there as much because I've really been realizing this dream around the keynote speaking. And to answer your question, I have nothing scheduled, but okay. I am open. Okay, you know where I'm at. I want to continue. I do want to continue representing women in the ring because I'm seeing more commentators, which is fantastic, female commentators here in Ontario. I forget her name. She's at United, but I love seeing her ringside. But there hasn't been another female ring announcer as far as I've seen in and around Ontario. And so I'd love to get back in there mostly.
I think that's awesome. I think one thing that's important, which is why it's so important to have this conversation, is there are so many opportunities outside of the physicality of the sport. So outside of just competing. And I know whenever it was a few weeks ago when Christina was talking to Corey, like, he's commentating, he's writing, he's doing a bunch of different things that aren't competing. that aren't coaching, and you're doing the same thing in a different way, which is amazing, because I think the one thing that is different on your end is that you're bringing non-boxers into the boxing community, which I think is really important. Because as you said earlier, there is a misconception about the sport, about the roughness or the, I don't know what other words to use, but how it's, you know, a dangerous sport, or things like that. And a lot of people that aren't in the know don't understand it fully. And I think it's nice that you're bringing people into a world and giving them the full details from the inside out, and giving them the messaging that they should receive, but they're not receiving.
Yeah, I love that you're saying this, and I have so much to say about this, but I'll try to keep it succinct. One of my underlying and really pressing desires, goals, my motivation, my driver is to help increase the fan base. So when I do keynote speaking at corporate events, I know that as a natural reaction, as a natural result, people are going to all of a sudden be piqued. Their curiosity is going to be piqued. I always say it's the first introduction that you have to boxing that's going to really, you know, enhance your chances of appreciating and understanding it. And one of the best ways to appreciate and understand the sport of boxing is to try it yourself. Even just put the gloves on, you know, preferably hire somebody or take a class with a trusted coach where you can learn some techniques. And what do we hear all the time, Helene? Wow, this is harder than I thought. Wow, pure respect for boxers. We hear it all the time because boxers make it look easy. Now, because a lot of people are introduced to boxing through media, maybe movies, maybe they saw Rocky, maybe it's from sensationalized stories that are spread over the internet or newspapers. And, you know, what really drew me into boxing as well, and I only realized this years later, because as a kid, as a young girl, I was such a sports fanatic. And what I loved about sports were the stories, the athletes' stories, the biographies, the triumphs, the trials, the tribulations, the effort, the climb to victory, the losses, how you come back from a loss. And this is what I really fell in love with about boxing. And this is what I wanted to help share with people, to help them understand, to help them find their fighter from within. And so I encourage those athletes now, like you said, there's so much more opportunity in and around the sport when we can talk about it in a way where this is it's one of the most raw, most real experiences that you can have or witness. And it really shows us something about being human, to be in this moment of conflict and having to face your own, we say you are your own toughest to fight. You are your own toughest opponent a lot of times. And something about that really draws something out of people, and they just don't know why. People don't understand unconsciously why they're so drawn to be curious about boxing, whether or not it's from a negative way or a positive way.
I agree. And I think it's interesting you say that. Like, I've said this to so many people. I have found, and this is something I've experienced and I know others have as well too, is that like you are your truest self in that ring. Like there is no way to hide any emotion, whether that's fear, excitement, anger, laughter, whatever it is. You can't hide it in there. It just all pours out, which is interesting as an athlete, and then also as a coach as well too, to see it, because some of these athletes come in and they have a very hard shell, but when they get into that ring, that shell comes off. And so it's a very interesting dynamic seeing both sides, and I'm sure you've experienced that as well.
Yeah, and I'm going to add to that. I'm going to add two things. So humble, first of all. Boxing is very humbling. And we all need to be humbled. I think we all need to be humbled at certain points in our lives. I think being humble is a very beautiful thing. It's a very human thing to experience as well. And, you'll be humbled within seconds in a boxing ring. And And it's okay. It's okay to feel that moment of, oh, okay, vulnerability, come back from it. What do I do? Tap into the tools, tap into what I know, trust my training. I belong here, and then respond, right? How many life lessons are in that 1 minute? The other thing right now, what I'm noticing, and maybe I wasn't able to put words to this for many years until I matured with the sport. And I'm seeing it at U of T, and I'm really paying attention. I'm like, wow, okay. Like, I knew it was going to be a hit, haha, pun intended. I knew the program at U of T was going to be a hit, but I am moved to tears by the responses that I'm getting from these students, the results, the feedback, the feelings, the love and adoration that these students have for their time with me in boxing training. And I'm like, what's going on here? And I realize that people right now, probably more than ever, intuitively, unconsciously, are feeling this need to protect themselves. The world is a very uncertain place. The world feels pretty scary right now for a lot of people. I would say maybe even in particular that age group. You have first year or any university age students, post-secondary age students, the young people who are uncertain about their future, people in general who are walking out of their doors and feeling the fear of crime being on the rise. I don't know if the stats are officially crime is on the rise, but it certainly feels like it. I live in downtown Toronto, and I'm actually just seeing it right in front of my eyes. And so what's happening here? People are starting to feel the intuitive need, because it's primal to want to know how to use your limbs, how to use your body, how to protect yourself, protect your family, and feel like you can take care of yourself. At least feel like you can if you had to. I don't teach you to fight so that you go out and fight. No, I teach you how to fight in case you have to fight. Then you don't have to fight because you know how to walk away. Because if you know how to fight, you're going to walk down the street with an attitude like I know how to fight, and nobody's going to come pick on you to fight.
Fair enough. No, we say that to any of the girls that we coach. And a story, I may have shared this before, but we had a girl. She was at a club and someone started up with her, and she stood up from her couch, chair, whatever it was, and presented herself in a way that was, don't mess with me. And they backed off. And she's like, I didn't even need to throw my hands. She's like, I was ready and I knew what to do. And I think she wanted to, like, I think she was excited to be able to use her skills, but it was a very interesting way of thinking about it, is that, like, a lot of times you don't need to, you just need to show that you can.
Yeah, and just knowing that you can, you carry yourself differently. You have a certain attitude about you, a certain confidence about even just your body language. And this is what we do. Helene, you and I, Christina, and all the other people who teach boxing for all the reasons, but let's say number one, self-confidence, confidence in, and it's not just confidence in knowing how to fight, because, you know, fighting again might give people the wrong idea that it's negative, that it's aggressive, that it's violent. And fighting is one of the most natural elements of being a human being and existing on this planet. We live in a world of polarity and contrast and conflict. We need to understand conflict. We need to understand ourselves within conflict so that we know how we're going to respond and react. If we don't see or sit in these feelings ever, then we're not going to know how we're going to react in the back alley when somebody tries a thing and we have no idea how we're going to react. So, and again, this isn't always just about physical altercations, but when we can understand the black and the white, the yin and the yang of being human, fighting is one of the quickest ways to get there. Understanding combat is one of the fastest ways to get to that place of understanding the polarity of being a human being.
You've done the Find Your Fighter Within workshop, and I know you actually did. I attended one of them. You did a couple virtual sessions, I guess, in the earlier days of COVID, and then you've done some speaker series which included that aspect. Am I correct in saying that?
The finder, I've done different
Okay.
variations of find your
And
fighter within.
then
Yes.
you've done the UFT. Now the big kind of next step is this upcoming workshop, correct? Retreat, I should say. Retreat. So can you
Retreat.
explain what it includes, why you're doing it, all the things?
Absolutely. So I wanted to host a retreat, a boxing themed or specific retreat for many years. And sometimes, when they say, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. Well, in this case, when the retreat leader is ready, the retreat space appears. So I attended a retreat this past November in 2022 at a brand new location just north of Kingston, Ontario. And I was completely inspired by the space. And I said, this is it. And this is the time. The time is now. The Find Your Fighter within the retreat, besides attending this retreat and then being inspired, what happened was when I did 3 keynote speeches in 1 month last fall. And these were pretty high level corporate events, up to some of the crowds had up to almost 300 people. Each keynote speech that I did with the Find Your Fighter Within concept, people came up to me immediately. Yvette, I want to learn how to box. Oh my God, I've always wanted to box. You hear it, Helene, all the time. I've always wanted to try boxing. And, this one woman, she was adorable. She was like secretly telling me Rocky was my favorite movie when I was growing up, and she was ashamed of saying that, and I'm like, say it loud and proud. I've always wanted to try boxing. So I'm like, wow, there's something here. And to our point, what we spoke about earlier, when you can introduce boxing as a concept and not just as a violent sport, it's a concept, then people can try it on for themselves and what that means for them. And when we can teach, boxing training, non-contact, you're not going to get hit. I promise. It's very controlled, and you're still going to come out feeling like a fighter. You're still going to learn the tactics, the techniques. You're still going to learn all the elements of being a fighter. And so this dawned on me. I was like, the time is now for me to host this retreat. I want to catch this momentum where I know people are feeling ready. The time is now, back to what I was saying before, because people are also looking to still recover from our time being isolated in the pandemic and the wildness of what's going on in the world. People are looking for a certain level of groundedness that's beyond the self-care and the meditation and the yoga. Nothing against those things, because I do them all, okay? But there's a place that's different. There's a place that needs to tap into that fire, that little kind of spark again, where people want to dream again. They want to set goals again, whereas they weren't really able to set goals for the last 2 years. So the retreat is going to be a combination of embodying the movements of a fighter. So there's going to be the physical aspects of it. It's going to be not too high level. It's going to be pretty fundamental and basic. But enough to give you a little bit of a workout and a good sweat. I'm going to do a lot of partner work where we can practice certain movements. And with that, we have that energy exchange. And that's where we're going to get the workout part from.
For just a second and say,
and then I'm going to have...
So it's funny that you say about how you're still going to get a good workout in, is that there's always this misconception that because you're doing technique and because it is the basics, there's a misconception between a good workout and it has to be fast-paced, it has to be non-technical. And so I appreciate the fact that you said, I hate that we have to mention that it's going to be a good workout, that we can't just trust in ourselves or have people trust us. But there is a misconception between technique and slowness in a workout that still results in a good workout.
Lean, you are so good at this. You are so good at this. Okay, here's another. 2022 was such a massive year for realizations, because the longer I'm sitting with this Find Your Fighter Within workshop, I'm seeing so many more angles to the sport that we love so much, and it's just so incredible. So to your point, teaching at UFT. So we don't have boxing bags at UFT, okay? Let me be clear. We have Girls Just Want to Box Gloves, by the way, at U of T. Girls Just Want to Box Gloves at U of T. And everything that I do with the students is all, shadow boxing style stuff, technique that you're talking about, drills and skills, lots of footwork. And then I have them do partner work. And this is an hour of this. And they are, by the end, they're sweating. They have a good pump. Their adrenaline is kicking in just like we want it to. Here's the thing. I realized, so I taught 15 years at least my own classes at a couple of different locations in around Toronto, and the studios where I taught had a boxing bag. So all my classes revolved around the boxing bag. So I would do our usual warm up, limbering movements, etc., different shadow boxing stuff, skills, drills, hop on the bag, and then the meat of the class, people loved to hit the bag. You know what I'm learning? The bag
100%.
was a distraction. The bag was a distraction. I'm only learning that now as I reflect back. And I will teach again on the bag. And I love teaching on the bag. And people love hitting the bag. But I'm learning, I'm seeing something so valuable, so cool, so interesting. And again, why do people back in the day and across the world, why did a lot of people get into boxing? Because you didn't require a lot of tools. It was a low cost entry point in activity, sport. So how cool is it that you can just use your body and get an amazing workout and still feel like you are embodying the movements of a fighter, and to your point, still getting a great workout. And with the distraction of the bag, what I mean by that, for those of you who are like, what the heck is she talking about? How many times, people come at the bag from different places, and you assume, as a coach, I've learned to not assume, but early on it'd be like, oh yeah, this person's gonna wail and they're gonna be amazing, and then they come and they're like afraid of their own power. And then you have that person who you never suspected, and they come wailing at the bag and they're like, whoa, you never hurt yourself, let's just tone this down. And so when you take the bag out of it, you take all of that out of it, you remove that from the equation, and you're asking the student to learn what their body is capable of without an external
I couldn't agree with you more.
apparatus.
I just a small personal note. Throughout lockdown, we had shadow boxing. That was, I don't have a heavy bag at the house. I wish I did, but I was shadow boxing, and over that time, I actually became a better boxer because I was able to feel my body in every movement. I wasn't distracted by getting excited, hitting the bag. Because as well too, there's also something, and I'm sure you've experienced this, the sound of hitting the bag or a paddle or a mitt or whatever it may be can distract you as well too. Just because it sounds good doesn't mean it is good. So that was something that I learned, that I've always known shadow boxing is important. It's a very awkward thing to do at first, and there's no way to get around it. You just have to keep practicing and get over the awkwardness, which I'm sure you've had with all of your clients as well too. So there's going to be an element of boxing at the retreat. What else is coming out of the retreat, or in addition with the boxing portion?
Yeah, so I must say, back to the retreat center, it's called Bloom Holistic Retreat Center. And it is absolutely stunning. It's beautifully done. The person who built it, his vision, was very meticulous. And the place, it's on a 650 plus acres of land just north of Kingston, and it's right on Lochborough Lake. I think I'm saying that correctly, Lochborough Lake. So it's right on the lake. So first of all, I must say, the experience itself of just the place and the space is absolutely exquisite. And it's going to immediately set the tone for this. Something special is about to happen here. So it is boxing themed for the purpose of helping people find their fighter within. And what I mean by that is I am going to share my keynote speech throughout the weekend. So we arrive Friday afternoon, we have dinner, we have an opening session, like a meet and greet session. It's a sleepover. It's like a sleepover camp, and you have your own bathroom in your own rooms. It's really beautifully done. And then we're going to incorporate my keynote speech, which is going to also incorporate some goal setting exercises. So, and then special guest, my Eldoa teacher. I'm actually going to have to do an IG live with my Eldoa teacher, similar to what we're doing here, just so her and I, there's so much to uncover around Eldoa. What is Eldoa? Basically, the Eldoa method is something that helped me a lot during COVID. Thankfully, I became a level 1/2 practitioner before COVID because Eldoa helped me a lot with old lingering injuries. And they are postures, basically, that were devised by an osteopath named Guy Voyer many years ago, over 30 years ago. And these postures are meant to help you treat yourself. And what these postures do is they specifically help to elongate your spine, stretch your spine, basically create space between each vertebrae in your spine. Hey, this is perfect for boxers. Absolutely perfect for boxers, because guess what? Everything we do in life compresses our spine, besides lying down, basically. So us sitting here right now, our spine is being compressed. Boxing, rotation, for sure compresses your spine. And over time, not ideal. So the Eldoa method helps to basically create space between your vertebrae. And when you do that, it helps to hydrate your spine as well and improve posture, and on the list goes. So I thought, wouldn't it be great to bring my Eldoa teacher to this retreat and introduce and give my students this incredible opportunity to learn the Eldoa method from one of the top practitioners in Ontario. So we're going to sprinkle the Eldoa method in and around our boxing training sessions as part of the warm up and cool down. And then our students will be able to walk away from the retreat not only feeling like a fighter from within, because they're going to be invigorated physically and mentally and emotionally, because we're going to do some goal setting, but they're also going to have the Eldoa in their body, we call it. So they're going to be introduced to this beautiful practice, which you can treat yourself.
It's a nice, well-rounded retreat.
Yes, and the food is beautiful. So they have a chef on site. All the food is included. And, I don't know if you've been to a retreat before, but some people might think, oh, like I brought a bunch of snacks thinking, oh, I might go hungry, right? And I have a very specific diet, basically. And nope, left the snacks in the car. A couple of the other girls at the retreat said the same thing. They were like, oh, I brought some snacks, but the food is nourishing. It's beautiful. It's as much as possible locally sourced. It is made by a chef the whole weekend. And it's really exquisite, exceptional, and it's going to be amazing. So I'm really excited. And it's the first of hopefully many or more to come. And, you don't hear about, there are people who are doing boxing retreats around the world. I've seen it. But I think this is going to be, I know it's going to be a little bit more unique, because it's not going to be just focused on the boxing moves. It's going to be focused on the feeling of what it's like to embody the feelings of being a fighter.
I think that's the most important part. I think that with boxing in general, it comes from the understanding. When you understand what you're doing, why you're doing it, you perform better. So I love the idea that you're kind of going at it from the other perspective. I would say I'm not going to say hundreds, but I would say there's a lot of boxing retreats that are just the physicality of strength training, of conditioning training, of footwork drills, head work drills, as well as, punching, whether that's hand pads or a bag. Whereas I like that you're able to do a bit of a 360 approach, which I think is really important, because that's what boxing is. Boxing is not just, we've talked about almost this whole time, it's not just about the punching.
Yeah. And, and again, when we we don't have to make it complicated. Who's the ideal client hey, Chris, who is your ideal client for this retreat? Don't forget to talk about why you like our coaching gear. I love my sticks and my paddles. Okay, so
Well,
what did you just say?
what we were talking about was the 360 approach to
360.
boxing. And then before we forget, when is the retreat? What are the dates? Please remind us.
March 3rd to 5th. We check in on the Friday afternoon and we check out Sunday after our wonderful brunch. To answer Chris's question, the retreat is ideal for people who identify as women, so women only. I was debating, do I do co-ed? It was actually a really tough decision. And then the way I decided it was, I said, okay, let me put this out there into the big bad world, into the big bad internet world, and see what comes back at me. And it was all women who expressed interest. So I said, okay, done. So the ideal the ideal participant of this retreat is a woman who is ready to set goals for herself. And I don't mean just, oh, I want to set the same goal that I've been setting for the last 10 years. This is designed for people who are ready to truly find that fire, that spark, to light that spark, to go after what they want in life in general, to learn how to, work their boundaries, to learn how to ask for what they want in life, to learn how to tap into themselves and understand themselves, because at the end of the day, a lot of this is about awareness and awareness of where we are right now in time and space and where we want to be. So this retreat is for any woman who wants to move forward somehow in a very, very encouraged, supported space. So far, the women who've signed up are really badass. I'm honestly, one of the things I'm excited about most, and one of the pleasure that I get out of this, being the retreat leader, is that I get to be witness to these relationships being developed, these connections being made, and women truly supporting each other to go after their dreams. And, again, when I have a follow-up retreat, or I'm going to, obviously, this retreat sounds very well-rounded and must have people feeling, yes, who's that? Yes, Amber. Hi, Amber. And so it's for those women who are truly ready to step forward. Yeah, to move forward, to step in and move forward. Step into the ring and go the distance.
Would you also say it might be for someone that maybe isn't there yet, but this is going to be that push for that as well too? Because I feel like that could also be another angle.
Yeah, because guess what? The women who are signing up for this retreat and who are going to sign up for this retreat, they are a full-bodied yes. I am. Even if it's, and I'm not talking about skill levels in terms of fitness. This is for all fitness levels, because again, this is going to be, it's not going to be very high energy, crazy workouts. They're called movement sessions. And so to answer your question, if they're just on the verge and they're like, in fact, this retreat is definitely for you, because you're going to be surrounded. When you spar someone, to be the best, you have to beat the best. To be the best, you have to spar with the best. We know that in boxing. And that's what I'm going to pull out. And I have a lot more surprises in this retreat, because on the Sunday, actually, I will tell you. So in terms of the people that you're going to be surrounding yourself with at the retreat, they're going to be your sparring partners. They're going to be there to help you get the most out of yourself, through encouragement and through different group exercises that I have designed. So I kind of want to keep it a secret, but okay, no, I'll tell you.
Whatever you feel comfortable
So on the
with.
Sunday,
no worries, no pressure.
I'll tell you. On the Sunday, after we've done the physical movements, we've embodied, we've learned some just basics. I might even just do the 1-2 slips, north, south. That might be it. A little bit of, and then a lot of it's going to be repetition and then just feeling and partner work, because that's where we're going to start to really draw from this concept of that dance of intimacy that we've been missing so much, because people are ready to connect again. And when we do these drills, and you see it at UFT, I see it all the time. They start they're giggling, they're laughing, they're connecting with each other beyond punching. They're exchanging, they're coaching each other. No, do it this way. No, she said that way, right? So developing relationship. So after the keynote speech, we're going to, after uncovering everyone's goals, and I'm going to talk about the goal setting process properly. One of the reasons people don't set goals is because they don't know how to. So I'm going to go through that in my keynote speech as well and give you some very thorough instructions around how to do that. And we're actually going to set these goals on Sunday at some point before everybody goes off into the big bad world feeling like the fighter that they are. I'm going to do an exercise where I introduce each and every one of them using my ring announcer voice, and they're going to come into the studio, and everyone is going to be the audience, and we're going to draw out the pretend ring, and they're going to come in. And if anybody wants to bow out of this exercise, they can, but trust me, everyone's going to want this. And I'm going to have a recording of this so that they can take home with them if they ever need that boost. They're going to have a recording of them being introduced into the makeshift ring with all of the other women cheering them on like as if they are a fighter. And
I love that. I think one of the things, I know Christina and I have done a bunch of workshops or mini little training camps with a group called Fast and Female, with their anywhere from 8 to 16 years old. And one of the best things that we do, just a way to, you know, especially when they're entering a Zoom or even an in-person, it's a little intimidating. Some of the girls know each other, some of the girls don't. And the big thing that we get them to do is come up with their fight name. And it's just fun. It's just a fun way for them. One, it gives you a little information about kind of who they are based on what they've chosen. But it also gives them that first little confidence of like, hi, my name is blank and my fighter name is this, versus the like traditional like, hi, I'm Helene, I'm from Toronto, this is my age, thanks, next. It gives it a little pizzazz, which I think is awesome. I love that idea. If someone is unable to attend this retreat because it's sold out hopefully soon, and or the date just doesn't work, are you hoping to do more of these?
Yeah, I want to do 3 this year. So I want to do the next one early summer, and then the one following that in the fall. Yeah, so one is going to build. I'm going to repeat the same retreat probably at least for this year. But as you know, we also modify, we specify the experience for who's in the room, right? So by the time we get park our butts there at the retreat center, let all of our, you know, stuff, park all of our stuff and come ready to absorb and learn and connect. Then we're just going to let the rest, just like a boxing match, just let it unfold organically as it needs to unfold. So yeah, so there's still space left. The rooms are designed either a queen bed on your own. You can have your own room with your own washroom. There's a room with 2 single beds, 2 twin beds, again with your own washroom. And then there's a quad bunk room, which is 4 beds in 1 room, also with their own washroom. So it's really designed, it's really smart the way it's designed, because you can either have your own room, or if you want it to be more affordable, you can share. And
okay, amazing. We'll leave all of your details in the caption so anyone can check in and follow up with that. As well too, if anyone is interested in your services speaking wise as well too, I guess, in what areas would you say you speak in? Obviously we've said the corporate world, but in what sense? Like what areas do you prefer working with? What areas have you worked in the past? Let us know.
So I speak to performance, I speak to perspective, I speak to team building. Those are probably the top 3. And when I say perspective, it's probably in there mixed in with performance and team building. And it's a good question, Helene, because it's one of those things I have to pick my lane in terms of who is my audience as a speaker. And last year I had the benefit of being able to, I was hired for different reasons from different companies. So as great as that was, it's also confusing because it's like, this message, the analogies taken from the ring, I take analogies from the boxing ring and bring them into the boardroom, can be applied to so many different facets of corporate, of life, of being a professional. So basically my tagline is that I help professionals in competitive industries gain and keep their edge. So because in boxing, as boxers, we are very well versed in things like discipline, focus, vision, game plan, training, preparation. These are elements that people are really looking for right now, and especially companies who are looking to get the most out of their employees. One of the best ways to get the most out of your employee is to really teach them about performance and how to think like a fighter. Really. I mean, I say this all the time. Fighters, boxers are one of the most efficient athletes on the planet. We don't like to waste energy in the ring. Okay? We do not like to waste energy in the ring. And everything is revolved. Yeah. We are the most efficient athletes probably in the world, I believe. Probably besides race car drivers, because they are split-second decisions in race car driving, right? And the pressure is on. And the pressure is on in boxing as well, as we know. And so why not learn these lessons? Why not learn this way of being, this lifestyle from an athlete who is very focused on that, knowing how to preserve energy, knowing when to jump in, knowing when to pull back. And these are concepts that people need to hear about right now.
I think it's awesome.
We can teach them about
I could talk to you about this side of things for a long time, because like I said earlier, I just love that you've created something that wasn't there before. Like I don't, and I'm sure you've kind of researched, like, I don't think there is any sort of workshop that correlates boxing with performance in the professional side of things, I should say, not in like a boxing world. I'm sure there's definitely keynotes on performance as an athlete in boxing, but not in what it does outside of the ring itself. So I'm fascinated by all that you do. And I know we could go on about that, but I will wrap it up with a few questions. One, if anyone does have any other questions for Yvette, whether it's about your keynotes, your speaking, your UFT stuff, the retreat, please throw it in the comment section. But to go into another section, which is women's boxing in general, where do you see it going given the last 2 to 3 years or so in the professional side of things, with a big momentum there? Where do you see the future of women's boxing trending to?
Well, hopefully we maintain this momentum, and I think we are, and I think we will, because even outside of boxing, beyond boxing, women in sport, people who identify as women in sport, are gaining attention for their level of talent, hard work, perseverance, performance. I already said talent. And in boxing in particular, for women's boxing, I mean, we are seeing it more. I just saw Amanda Serrano just announced with DAZN and Matchroom that she's headlining Madison Square Gardens again. And I believe it's
there are some males on it. However, the super interesting thing about it, it's probably one of the first posters, and I have not been in the game long enough, so I always need to mention that. It's the first poster I've ever seen where there's 3 females on the biggest part of the poster, and the males are at the back. So there are 2 males on either side, and then there's Ramla Ali, there's Alicia Baumgardner, and that's why it looks like it is an all-female card, which is, it's a very interesting like flip of the script to what we're used to seeing.
Yeah, and come to think of it, that's Eddie Hearn, Matchroom Boxing, and he was on the opposing side of Amanda Serrano last time. So I don't know if Jake Paul's going to be with Amanda Serrano this time around, but obviously Eddie Hearn is seeing something here because he was present in New York City in April 23rd when me and Chris, Girls Just Want to Box, went to go watch one of the biggest fights in female history this past year. And, you know, it took New York City by storm. And I'm not just saying that because that was our perspective. There were other people, including men, saying that they were so impressed by the energy that was brought on into the city from these two women fighting, Katie Taylor, Amanda Serrano. So I do believe that that was a notch that brought us up a notch higher in terms of, and to add to that, it was an amazing fight. It was an amazing performance, right? Thank goodness it was an amazing performance. We had no doubt, because a lot of the times the women's fights are sometimes the most exciting fight of the night. Part of the reason for that is, yes, because they are 2-minute rounds as opposed to 3-minute rounds, which means you have to get a lot more in within the 2 minutes than the 3 minutes. But the audience doesn't know that. They just see an exciting fight. They're just like, wow, this is like high energy back and forth. So I do see women's boxing continuing to grow for sure. You know what? Whether you like it or not, whether you believe it or not, whether you understand it or not, why do people fight? The reality is people want to fight. That is the reality. Why do we have boxing? Because we want rules and regulations to administer, to provide this platform for people to compete in this sport that a lot more and more we're seeing women come out. And what's interesting that we're seeing as well with the power of social media, and which again, I didn't have this tool. We didn't have this tool 23 years ago when I was fighting, when I was competing. I didn't have this tool of social media to promote myself. Now we do. You can be your own promoter on social media, not officially your own promoter, but technically you can be, and you can build your brand. So the women, the athletes, doesn't matter what gender, the athletes who are tuned into this and who understand this are going to use this tool to their advantage to help to increase visibility and representation. So yes, so it's growing. We already saw the first announcement of the year for February being a big female fight, and there are more to come because, you know, and again, back to when we say, if one of the reasons is to increase the fan base in boxing, one of my arguments for being a female ring announcer is 50% of your potential market are female, and you're missing out on 50% of the population who could become a fan. If they see, and again, this is unconscious, if they see a woman in there representing, then they can relate. It's more relatable, obviously. So if the goal is to increase the fan base and that brings bums into seats, because that's what all promoters want, then why not just show them something that they want to see?
Fair enough. One thing I thought was really interesting, and I'd just be curious, I was listening to another podcast that was done by Brooke Deirdre. I'm going to butcher the name of it. So it's on Talk and Fight on YouTube. And she was saying that a lot of the young girls she's hearing now, when they say like, who's your fighter that you looked up to as a amateur or even as a kid growing up? And she was saying something that irritated her was a lot of females not naming other females. And she's like, there are so many women in the sport that have done so much, you know, even back in your day, Yvette, like I know there, maybe the pool wasn't as big, but there were still some women in that era. And I'm curious to know how you feel about that sentiment.
What I will say about that, that's interesting. That is interesting. Now, when you ask somebody, a female, who inspired them when they were up and coming, if their answer is a male fighter, then that's true for them. Okay, so we can't take that away from them, right? Now, we have to ask ourselves, why is their reaction, why is their first choice a male? Is it because that's all they saw or what they noticed or what they paid attention to? And what I'm going to say to that, I mean, the woman, the person, the fighter who inspired me the most, there was two, but Lucia Riker definitely was. I saw a picture of her. I watched her Shadow Boxer documentary and I was like, wow, this woman's amazing and I can do this. Ann Wolf was the other woman who really inspired me. But when it comes down to, for example, the opportunities that I've had as a ring announcer, the opportunities that I've had in corporate speaking, and on the list goes in terms of, me rising through the ranks outside of the ring, funny enough, a lot of these opportunities were given to me by men because these men were seeing the work that I put into it and respected the work that I did. And because they happened to be in those powers, they happened to be in those positions to have that power to make that decision, for example. And so I always want to say, yes, we need to honor the women who came before us, but if it's true for you that it was actually a male who inspired you and who gave you that opportunity, then that's true for you. And maybe it will change the more women come in and the more we kind of, like, we're the ones who have to be inspiring enough to inspire
Agreed.
and to be spoken of. Right? And so it's also okay to, I think it's very personal. I think it's really personal. And yeah, we could teach the younger girls to look for and give mention to the women who have done things before them. And we also, the pioneers, the ones who have been before, also have to learn how to present that and to speak about it and to make a case for it and to continue, which is amazing work that Sue T.I. Fox is doing with, and I know Girls Just Want to Box is getting more and more involved every year with the Women's International Boxing Hall of Fame. And this is exactly what I'm talking about. Give a reason why, make a case for what these women have done. And it's truly incredible what Sue is doing and all of her constituents or people who are helping. So
I mean, at the end of the day, it's your opinion, right? I was just curious. I heard that actually earlier today, and it was a very interesting thought. I was, because even I know when I've asked other women or women identifying in the sport, it's typically always, any of the fighters that I've worked with, whether it's actually coaching or just coming to a session sparring, it's typically a male that they mention that their style is like, and or that they watch, or that they embody, or that they aspire to be. And I thought it was interesting that when she made that comment, I was like, that's true. I never really hear, a lot of women saying that.
Yeah. And you know what? It goes to show also, boxing's a very visual sport as well, right? We're very drawn into it visually, and we react to it from a visceral, visual place, I should say. Now, to your point, so we are conditioned through the media and through how we take in information around sports, for example. We have been conditioned up until now, over the years, to pay attention to men's styles, men's records, men's, weights, whatever it is, their fights coming up. Back to your point about the posters. When all we see is Mike Tyson and there's like no picture of Christy Martin, then it's like, oh, we see her when she's finally on TV and it's like, oh my God, what is that? Right? And it's like you happen to catch a glimpse of her on TV, but you didn't see her on the poster. Then this is how we're conditioned. We're not conditioned to see other women represent and working just as hard. And so back to, it starts in the gym, right? And it starts with conversations like these. And the fact that we're having this conversation is just the starting point, because then when you get to the gym and all the posters are of men, that's another problem. How many boxing clubs do you walk into? Like, again, where are the posters of women? I had this conversation with a club owner in the GTA. And I said, I will send you, and it doesn't necessarily have to be me, but if you want representation, like I'll send you one of my beautiful photos that Virgil Barrow had taken of me ring announcing, being the first female professional ring announcer in Canada, just to have a female on the wall of something, like just to represent, right? And it begins in the gyms. It begins in our conversations and saying, giving credit to, one more thing about that. I was actually at Hard Knocks. This was a couple of months ago, and there was sparring going on. And I'm going to actually mention his name because I want to give him credit for this. And Lucas Badi was there with a couple of the other female fighters because they were training for Amanda, and Sarah was there. And
Is Lindsay?
doesn't
Lindsay?
matter. It does matter, but
Okay.
possibly Lindsay. So I was there training a client kind of in the background or whatever, and Lucas is walking around, and at one point he takes his hoodie off and he starts training, and I was like, and he was wearing Sarah's shirt. He was representing Sarah's training in Sarah's shirt. And I said, and I actually didn't, in the moment, I didn't want to bother him training, but I saw him actually just a couple of weeks ago at a Christmas event. And I walked up to him and I said, by the way, you probably don't remember this, but that was really important what you did. That was amazing and impressive. And this is how we're going to have other women finally start paying attention to other women, because we do need to big each other up, wear each other's outfits and clothing. And when the men are doing it, that was just a wicked move.
I like to hear that as well too, because that is something that's not very common, and it's also a lot for him to do. Maybe he might not feel that it's a lot for him to do, but that's a big step, even though he may not think that it is. So that's amazing.
Yeah.
So I guess the last thing that I will say is, if you could have one wish for the future of boxing, would that be to have more women involved in the sport in all areas? I know we kind of touched about that earlier. Is that something that you'd like to see change?
Yeah, absolutely. Of course. And it's happening. It is happening. It's happening across all sports, as we know. Boxing there's been a lot of improvement. We have, beyond referees and judges now, we have commentators. We have, I think that woman that I was speaking of, I wish I remember her name. I think she's doing color commentating. I'm not sure. Ring announcer, which is pretty epic. I gotta say, okay? Female ring announcer, that is a pretty epic barrier to be broken in what is such a traditionally male role, honestly. And I'm not the only one. There are other female ring announcers across the states, and I think there's some popping up across Canada here and there. There's a young girl in Montreal, in Quebec. And so that's massive for our sport, as you know. Do I want to see more women in different roles around the sport? Yes, and we are seeing it. Interviewers and broadcasters. And the other thing I wanted to say was, what else I want to see is more fairly matched fights for women. And I know that's sometimes a problem across the board in boxing in general, but we're getting better, but there's room for improvement there as well. And yeah, we're on a good road. We're on a very positive road, and it's really up to us, right? It's up to us, what Christina and you are doing, and Kevin, and all the women who show up and host these types of interviews and talk about what needs to happen. This is how we make it happen.
A lot of really great points from today that you've made that I know that hopefully some people will take home and use. And as well too, the retreat is going to be incredible. If you can go in March, go. If not, you said summer and fall, correct?
I'm hoping.
The plan.
Yes, that is, I'm putting it out there. That is the plan. As I've learned, especially from the last year, it can go in different ways, but it's all going to grow organically and it's all going to evolve. So if it's not a retreat, it's going to be something else. Find Your Fighter Within is not going away.
It will evolve into whatever it needs to be. Amazing. I think that's super important. Thank you so much for your time, Yvette, for sharing all the things today about everything that you've done and being a little bit open and honest with your previous experience. I know that sometimes I feel like maybe now it's easier to talk about, but I know that reminding yourself of the pro world and that experience might not be as easy to do. So I appreciate you sharing that with us.
Oh, no problem. Thank you for the conversation. Thank you for all the work that you do, with all the love and passion you put into what you do. You're welcome, Christina. Girls Just Want to Box, big up, props. I'm a proud ambassador. I love the gear. I've been using the paddles and the sticks and the gloves and they are absolutely my favorite. I've used different brands over the years, and you know, my clients, they just laugh at me because I'm like, don't touch my paddles, don't touch my sticks. And I truly, and it's very heartfelt because I know where they came from. I know the labor of love that went into your designs, and I truly appreciate it, and even more proud to use your products.
Well, and that was one of the reasons why we wanted to bring you in as an ambassador, because not only do you understand the sport from that 360 approach and all the facets, but you also really, the work that you're doing is so important that I hope that this can go, you know, a bit more national, international, because I think that the work that you're doing can be taken that far. So dream big, Yvette, dream big. It's going to happen. And hopefully we can be a part of it with you. Yeah.
I would love that.
So thank you again. Thanks to everyone that tuned in. And we look forward to seeing you in person, hopefully at the next boxing event that's coming up soon. Okay, sounds good. Have a great night. Thanks again.